Successful something happens quietly after the age of 50 that most people only notice when it is already well underway. You stand up from a chair and you hesitate for a half second longer than you used to. You carry grocery bags and your arms feel it in a way they did not 5 years ago. You climb a flight of stairs and your legs feel heavier halfway up. You might chalk it up to age, you might tell yourself it is normal, and in one sense you're right. It is common, but common is not the same as unavoidable. The process behind those changes has a clinical name, sarcopenia. Successful it describes the gradual loss of skeletal muscle mass and strength that accelerates after 50 and becomes more pronounced with each decade. By the time most people reach 65, they have already lost a meaningful percentage of the muscle they had at 40. 1 in 3 adults over 65 has sarcopenia significant enough to affect their daily function, and the consequences move well beyond feeling tired. Successful muscle loss is directly linked to increased fall risk, slower recovery from illness, reduced metabolic health, and loss of the kind of independence that most people, when asked what matters most in their later years, describe as the thing they most want to keep. The conventional response to sarcopenia is to recommend more protein and more resistance exercise. Both of those recommendations are correct, but they miss something. Successful they miss the question of what specific foods provide not just protein, but the precise combination of amino acids, anti-inflammatory compounds, and cellular signaling nutrients that aging muscle tissue needs to stop breaking down and start rebuilding. Because the right foods do not just provide raw material, they activate the biological machinery that makes muscle repair possible. This video is about those foods. Successful, we are going to cover 5 of them, all of them affordable, all of them accessible, all of them backed by research into the specific mechanisms that drive muscle preservation in older adults. And we are going to explain not just what to eat, but why each food works at the physiological level. Because understanding the mechanism is what turns a general piece of advice into something you can commit to. Let us start with the food that addresses one of the most fundamental bottlenecks in age-related muscle preservation. The first food is chickpeas. Successful, and before you move past that, stay with the mechanism, because it is more interesting than the food name suggests. Every time your muscles do work, whether that is walking, climbing stairs, lifting something, or even maintaining your posture across a long day, microscopic damage occurs in the muscle fibers. This is not injury in the pathological sense, it is the normal mechanical stress of muscular contraction. Under ideal conditions, your body repairs that microdamage during the hours and days after activity, and the repaired fibers come back slightly stronger than before. Successful, this is how muscle is maintained and how it grows. The problem that emerges with age is not a lack of protein in the diet. Many older adults actually consume reasonable amounts of protein. The problem is that the signaling pathway that triggers muscle protein synthesis becomes less responsive. The biological switch that says repair this fiber now requires a stronger signal to activate than it did at 30 or 40, and the specific compound that activates that switch most powerfully is an amino acid called leucine. Chickpeas contain leucine. Successful, they also contain a complete profile of essential amino acids, the 9 amino acids your body cannot produce on its own and must obtain from food. They provide approximately 9 grams of protein per 100 grams of cooked chickpeas, along with around 50 milligrams of magnesium. That magnesium matters more than most nutrition discussions acknowledge. Successful magnesium is required for over 300 enzymatic processes in the human body, and a significant number of those processes involve muscle function directly. The regulation of muscle contraction, energy production within muscle cells, and the efficient utilization of dietary protein. Studies have found that low magnesium status in older adults is associated with greater muscle weakness and higher rates of sarcopenia, independent of protein intake. Successful chickpeas are also one of the more fiber-rich legumes, which supports gut health in ways that connect back to muscle maintenance through the gut-muscle axis, a communication pathway between intestinal bacteria and muscle tissue that research is increasingly recognizing as significant. A healthy gut microbiome produces short-chain fatty acids that reduce systemic inflammation, and chronic low-grade inflammation is one of the mechanisms that accelerates muscle breakdown in older adults. Successful in practical terms, chickpeas are inexpensive, widely available, store well in both dried and canned form, and integrate easily into meals that do not require significant cooking skill. Roasted with olive oil as a snack, added to salads, incorporated into soups, blended into hummus, or served alongside vegetables and a source of animal protein. They offer a reliable daily contribution to the amino acid supply your muscles need. The second food is green peas, and the reason they deserve separate attention from chickpeas is that they bring something different to the muscle preservation picture. Successful green peas are a source of lysine, an essential amino acid that plays a specific role in collagen synthesis. Collagen is the structural protein that forms tendons, ligaments, and the connective tissue surrounding muscle fibers. When people think about the structural components of the musculoskeletal system, they tend to focus on muscle and bone. But tendons and ligaments are what connect muscle to bone and transfer force between them. Their health and integrity directly affect how well muscle function translates into controlled, stable movement. Successful as collagen production declines with age, joints become less stable, tendons become less elastic, and the kind of minor stress that younger connective tissue absorbs without consequence becomes more likely to cause injury or discomfort. Lysine, along with vitamin C, is essential for the hydroxylation reactions that cross-link collagen fibers and give them their structural strength. Green peas also contain leucine, which provides that same muscle protein synthesis signal as chickpeas. Successful. They offer approximately 5 grams of protein per 100 grams of cooked peas along with iron, which serves a different but equally important function in the muscle preservation context. Iron is required for the production of hemoglobin in red blood cells, and hemoglobin is the molecule that carries oxygen from your lungs to your tissues, including your muscles. When iron status is inadequate, oxygen delivery to muscle cells is compromised, and the result is the kind of fatigue that feels disproportionate to the level of activity that caused it. You stand up and feel heavy. Successful, you walk across the parking lot and feel more tired than makes sense. Low iron does not always present as dramatic anemia with obvious symptoms. Suboptimal iron levels can quietly reduce the oxygen-carrying capacity of the blood enough to make everyday movement significantly more effortful. For older adults managing multiple nutritional challenges simultaneously, this kind of invisible drain on energy matters. The absorption of iron from plant sources is enhanced substantially by consuming vitamin C at the same meal. Successful, a squeeze of lemon juice over peas, a handful of tomatoes alongside them, or half a red bell pepper in the same dish can increase iron absorption by up to 60%. This is a simple, practical pairing that costs nothing in terms of effort and makes the nutritional content of the meal meaningfully more effective. The third food is spirulina, which is genuinely unusual in its nutritional profile and worth understanding precisely because it provides things that most whole foods cannot. Spirulina is a blue-green algae. Successful, it is available in powder form and in capsules. And a single teaspoon of the powder, approximately 3 grams, contains a complete protein profile with around 2 grams of highly bioavailable protein, including all 9 essential amino acids. For something measured in teaspoons rather than servings, that density is remarkable. It also provides iron, magnesium, and a range of B vitamins including B1, B2, and B3, which function as cofactors in cellular energy production. Successful when mitochondria, the energy-producing organelles inside your cells, are converting nutrients into usable energy. B vitamins are required at multiple steps in that conversion pathway. Muscle cells have particularly high mitochondrial density because of their continuous energy demands, which makes B vitamin status directly relevant to how much energy your muscles can generate and how quickly they recover after use. But the compound in spirulina that makes it distinctly relevant to muscle preservation in older adults is phycocyanin, a pigment found nowhere else in the food supply. Successful, phycocyanin is a potent anti-inflammatory compound. It has demonstrated the ability in research settings to inhibit specific inflammatory signaling pathways, including the cyclooxygenase and lipoxygenase pathways that produce prostaglandins and leukotrienes, the molecules responsible for the chronic low-grade inflammation that accelerates muscle breakdown. This is not the acute inflammation of an injury, which serves a protective function. This is the sustained inflammatory background that becomes more pronounced with age and that directly interferes with the muscle repair cycle. Successful, by reducing this inflammatory load, phycocyanin creates a more favorable biological environment for muscle protein synthesis to occur. Spirulina is almost entirely absorbed from water, which means it does not require cooking or preparation. Stirred into a smoothie, mixed into yogurt, or dissolved in a glass of cold water with lemon juice. It integrates into any morning routine with minimal effort. The flavor is earthy and slightly oceanic, which not everyone finds pleasant at first, but it is easily masked by other ingredients in a blended drink. Successful, the fourth food is parsley, which is almost never discussed in the context of muscle health, and that absence from the conversation reflects a broader tendency to think about food primarily in terms of macronutrients, while overlooking the phytochemicals that regulate how effectively those macronutrients are actually used. Parsley contains epigenin, a flavonoid compound that has demonstrated significant anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity in research, with particular relevance to muscle tissue. Successful, apigenin appears to reduce the expression of inflammatory cytokines within muscle cells, and to support satellite cell activity. Satellite cells are the stem cells resident within muscle tissue that are responsible for repairing damage to muscle fibers and contributing to the formation of new muscle protein. As adults age, satellite cell activity declines, which is one of the reasons that the same exercise stimulus produces a smaller muscle-building response in an older person than in a younger one. Successful, compounds that support satellite cell function are therefore directly relevant to the specific biological challenge that sarcopenia represents. Parsley is also one of the most concentrated dietary sources of vitamin K available in the ordinary food supply. Vitamin K activates proteins called osteocalcin and matrix GLA protein, which are involved in directing calcium toward bone tissue rather than allowing it to deposit in arterial walls and soft tissue. But vitamin K is also directly involved in the activation of proteins within muscle tissue that support contraction efficiency and recovery. Successful older adults with inadequate vitamin K status have been found in research to have greater reductions in muscle mass over time than those with adequate levels, an association that remains significant even after controlling for other dietary factors. Parsley's iron content, while not dramatically high in small culinary quantities, contributes to daily intake when the herb is used regularly. When consumed with a source of vitamin C, which parsley itself contains in meaningful quantities, that iron is absorbed efficiently. Successful practically, parsley is one of the most versatile culinary herbs in common use. Fresh parsley added to cooked grains, incorporated into salad dressings, stirred into soups, or blended into sauces, like chimichurri, becomes a regular dietary contribution without requiring any specific behavioral change beyond the decision to use it consistently rather than treating it as an occasional garnish. The fifth food is chives, and the reason they complete this set is that they bring a category of bioactive compounds that the other four foods in this list do not provide. Successful chives belong to the allium family, which also includes garlic, onions, and leeks. The characteristic compounds in allium vegetables are organosulfur molecules, including allicin-related compounds produced when the cell walls of these plants are disrupted. These compounds have well-documented anti-inflammatory and circulation-supporting effects. They appear to support the endothelial function of blood vessels, the health of the inner lining that regulates how blood vessels dilate and contract in response to demand. Successful for muscle tissue, which requires rapid increases in blood flow during activity to deliver oxygen and nutrients, and to clear metabolic waste. Endothelial function is directly relevant to how efficiently muscles perform and recover. Chives also contain quercetin, a flavonoid with significant antioxidant activity that has been studied specifically in the context of exercise-induced muscle damage. Quercetin has demonstrated the ability to reduce markers of oxidative stress in muscle tissue following physical exertion and to attenuate the inflammatory response that would otherwise delay recovery. Successful for an older adult whose muscles are subject to daily mechanical stress from ordinary activity. A compound that reduces the oxidative burden on muscle cells and supports faster recovery is directly relevant to the cumulative muscle health picture. The vitamin C content of chives is substantial relative to their volume, and vitamin C in this context contributes not only to iron absorption and collagen synthesis, but also to the regeneration of other antioxidants, including vitamin E and glutathione, within muscle cells. Successful fresh chives are available year-round in most grocery stores, grow easily in a pot on a windowsill, and require only chopping before use. Added to scrambled eggs, stirred into yogurt, scattered over baked potatoes, mixed into cottage cheese, or used as a finishing herb over soups and stews, they become part of a routine without requiring specific preparation time or culinary skill. Now, let us put all of this together, because the real value of these 5 foods is not in eating any one of them occasionally. Successful it is in creating a dietary pattern where they appear consistently across the week, contributing a steady supply of the specific compounds that aging muscle tissue needs. The daily picture might look like this. Breakfast built around eggs with fresh chives, which provides complete protein, leucine, vitamins D and B12, and the circulation-supporting organosulfur compounds from the chives. A teaspoon of spirulina powder stirred into a glass of water or a small smoothie provides phycocyanin for inflammation management and B vitamins for cellular energy production. Successful lunch incorporating chickpeas in any form, whether as part of a salad, a soup, a grain bowl, or a side alongside a lean protein, contributes leucine, magnesium, and fiber to support the gut-muscle axis. Green peas appearing in the day's second meal add lysine for collagen synthesis and iron for oxygen transport, paired with a squeeze of lemon juice to maximize iron absorption. Fresh parsley used as a herb throughout the day in dressings, over cooked dishes, or in sauces contributes apigenin for satellite cell support, vitamin K for muscle protein activation, and additional vitamin C. Successful none of this requires dramatic changes to how you shop or cook. It requires paying attention to what you already eat and finding consistent places within your existing meal patterns for these specific foods. One practical point worth addressing directly: the question of whether plant-based protein sources like legumes and herbs can meaningfully contribute to muscle preservation in the context of age-related sarcopenia, or whether only animal protein is sufficient. Successful. The research is clear that leucine content and amino acid completeness are what matter most for stimulating muscle protein synthesis, and that adequate total daily protein intake across meals is more important than any single meal's protein quantity. Chickpeas and green peas both contain leucine. Spirulina contains all essential amino acids. When these plant foods are consumed alongside adequate overall protein intake, from whatever sources fit your dietary preferences and tolerances, they contribute meaningfully to the nutritional environment that muscle preservation requires. Successful the anti-inflammatory compounds in these foods. Phycocyanin from spirulina, apigenin from parsley, quercetin from chives, and the organosulfur compounds from chives address a dimension of sarcopenia management that protein intake alone does not cover. Muscle breakdown is not only a matter of insufficient protein supply, it is also a matter of an inflammatory environment that accelerates the breakdown side of the muscle protein turnover equation while impairing the synthesis side. Successful foods that reduce that inflammatory burden are therefore acting on the problem from a different angle than protein foods, and the combination of both approaches is more effective than either alone. A note on consistency because it is the variable that determines whether any dietary change produces observable results. The biological processes that drive muscle preservation operate over weeks and months, not days. A week of optimal nutrition does not reverse years of suboptimal intake. Successful but a consistent shift in dietary patterns, sustained over months and eventually becoming simply how you eat, does produce measurable changes in muscle mass, strength, and functional capacity. Research studies examining dietary interventions for sarcopenia consistently find that outcomes are proportional to adherence and duration. The participants who experience the most meaningful improvements in walking speed, grip strength, and lower body function are those who maintain their dietary changes across the full study period. This means that the practical question is not which foods to eat. Successful it is how to make eating those foods reliable enough that it happens most days without requiring significant ongoing effort. The answer to that question is simpler than most people expect: defaults and convenience. If chickpeas are already in the pantry, they go into the dish. If chives are already in the refrigerator, they end up on the eggs. If spirulina powder is already on the counter next to the morning glass, it goes into it. The decision needs to happen once, at the point of purchase, and then the habit follows without requiring repeated decisions. The final point is this: successful sarcopenia is common. It is not inevitable. The research is consistent that older adults who consume adequate protein, including the specific amino acids leucine and lysine that activate muscle repair pathways, who manage chronic inflammation through dietary antioxidants and anti-inflammatory compounds, and who maintain physical activity of even moderate intensity can preserve meaningful muscle mass and function well into their 70s, 80s, and beyond. The 5 foods in this video are not expensive. They are not exotic. They do not require special preparation. Successful, they require only the knowledge that they work and the decision to include them regularly in how you eat. Every meal is an opportunity to provide your muscles with what they need to stay functional and strong. The foods are available. The mechanism is understood. The question now is simply whether you will use them. If you found this useful and want to continue exploring what the research says about nutrition and healthy aging, subscribe so you do not miss the next video. Share this with someone you know who is thinking about how to stay strong and independent in the years ahead. Successful, and leave a comment below telling us which of these foods you already eat and which one you're going to start adding this week. We read every comment and we would genuinely like to know